Hi guys, welcome to the next video tutorial. Today we will talk about chapter 6, which is cultural and cross-cultural. Cultural and cross-cultural. Meaning, um, we talk about culture. Okay, we talk about culture means something which we used to do, what we used to do. That is our culture. And cross-culture means you have a culture in, let's say, in Malaysia, and then you go to Indonesia, you may have a different culture. So that is what we meant by cross-cultural. But before that, I want to talk about little bit about um, consumer behavior. So basically, consumer behavior, okay, just refresher, is about you and I. It's about the consumer, okay. And well, we need to know about consumer behavior because we wanted to know how consumer react to our product, to our brand. So, how do you characterize the consumer? You can either like go by way of demographic, whereby you look at the gender, religion, ethnicity, the the place of residence. Okay, or you can go by way of psychographic, whereby you go by way of interest, opinion, and activities, or IAO. um, Means you look at what is similar between all these consumer. Uh, it may cross the geographical boundaries, because maybe I may live in Malaysia and someone may live in, let's say, in France. Although we are living in two different geographical locations, but we may share the same interest. Maybe we both love running, for example. So that's interest. Or opinion. We may share the same opinion. For example, we may share the same opinion about global warming. So although apart from our opinion and interests, we are different, but what makes us the same is our interest and opinion. So if you wanted to do a market segmentation, you may want to use psychographic or interest, opinion, activities. Uh, Talking about sharing of interests or psychographic, this is where I will talk about tribe. Okay, tribal members or online communities, whereby all these tribe members, they share the same interests or opinion. Maybe they like a certain good. For example, I may love Apple product, so I may share the same interest with someone in America who may love Apple product as well. So that's what we call tribal members. Hmm? um, how our opinions or interests are shaped. These interests, opinions, or activities may be shaped by our background, by our upbringing, or maybe shaped by our culture, for example. Okay, for example, um, you may be brought up by your mother figure. Means you uh, you spend more time with your mother, for example. So your opinion about respect of women, okay, gender equality. So uh, how do you come up with that opinion or that behavior? Because it was shaped by your upbringing. Okay, and sometimes these tribal members, they are using that product to define his or her identities. It's like a product or oneself extension through that product. For example, take Apple product, for example. Okay, Apple product previously, when it first came into the market, it tried to sell the idea of rebellion. It tried to sell the idea of you being unique. So if you wanted to to be known as a rebel or a person who are unique, then you are buying Apple product. So it's some sort of telling the whole world or telling the other people who you are through the product that you buy or the service that you use. Example. Okay, that is using the product to define yourself, using the product as an extension of your profile or extension of your personality. Okay, you try to get the product to define your personality. Okay, so uh, this is also can be used for tribal members, because the moment you are in a tribe, okay, you wanted to be a part of that tribe, then you will try to buy the product, you try to engage with the product in the social medias, you know that. um, you also need to know, okay, when we talk about product, we need to know stages of products, whereby when a person buying a product, it has three stages. First is pre-purchase, means how uh, do you need the product, for example. You need to understand whether the consumer need the product, how the consumer get the information about the product, and what are the alternative choice, okay, a competing product. And then you need to know what is the behavior of the consumer when they purchase the product. So how do they get product? How do they buy the product? Where do they get the product? And what does the purchaser say about the product? And then at the end, post purchase, whereby after the consumer use the product, what are they going to do with the leftovers? For example, the wrappers. Let's say you buy a chocolate, for example. Then how do you dispose of the wrapper? Or for example, last time if you're using a Nokia phone, after you no longer use the phone, how do you dispose of the battery? If you're buying a bottle of Coke, are you going to just throw away the bottle, or are you going to recycle? Or are you using it for souvenirs? Are you using it for, you put it on your bookshelf, for example, as part of your deco? So that is the behavior of consumer after they consume your product. And you also need to know this, because let's assume that you know that, for example, a bottle of Coke, you know that most of your consumer, after they consume the bottle, they consume the after they drank the Coke, then they they wanted to keep the bottle as a mementos, for example. So meaning to say, you need to keep the shape of the bottle unique, distinctive. So every time when they put it as a memento, they put it on the, let's say, on their bookshelf, they look at the bottle, then it keep on reminding them about Coke. Okay, that's one way of reminding your consumer about your product. Hmm? Now, uh, we go to cross-cultural values now. Okay, why? Because now we are not living in an island. Okay, why? For example, virus like COVID-19 virus is spread all over the world because of globalization. People travel from one place to another. People from China, they travel all over the world, and people all over the world, they travel to China. People in China have a trade with the rest of the world, and the rest of the world trade with China. So we always interact, okay, globally. Basically, in the era of globalization, we always interact with each other. There's no boundaries. It's a borderless world. So if goods can go transboundary, more so like a virus. So that's why you see that uh, last time, if a place before we have all this trade, world trade, whenever a certain pandemic or pandemic in one area, it only will affect that one area. But because of globalization, because of human interaction, because of the world citizen going everywhere, all the globes, everywhere in the globes every day, so things spread. Okay, so but when you go to another place, for example, you need to respect the culture of that particular place. Okay, so when you are, let's say, a company from Malaysia, so you so used with the culture in Malaysia, but when you wanted to do business in, let's say, in um, Vietnam, for example, or you wanted to do business in France, for example, or in the UK or in Denmark, then you may need to adapt. Okay, you may need to adapt your culture with the current culture. You need to respect the local culture. There are a few cross-cultural strategy. For example, standardized strategy. When you have standardized strategy, this is where the place that you go, let's say you go to Indonesia, although it is a different country, but Indonesia may have a similar culture as Malaysia. I'm not saying it is the same, but it may have a similar. The language may be similar, although it's not the same, but it may be similar. For example, Malay language in Malaysia and Malay language in Indonesia may have a slight difference, but at least if we talk a standard Malay language, both Indonesian and Malaysian can understand. So if you have this kind of countries whereby like Malaysia and Indonesia or Malaysia or Brunei, whereby you have some sort of similar culture, you may wanted to use a standardized strategy. Second strategy is localized strategy, whereby you have totally different culture. For example, Disney. Disney is from America, so when they wanted to open in Hong Kong, so Hong Kong is a Chinese culture. So Disney, when they open in Hong Kong, they use Feng Shui, for example. Okay, when they open in certain dates, which give some sort like um, lucky numbers or lucky dates. And hotels in Disney in Hong Kong, they do not have number four because it's a taboo in China. Number four is very taboo, so they may like 3A, not 3A, 5, that. Okay. Um, but then I wanted you to think about Apple, for example. Apple, it's very rare to see Apple with a local advertisement. Means when they do advertisement, they use a standard. They use American version of um, advertisement. Only one exception, or one of the exceptions I can think, is when they do a Chinese New Year advertisement, whereby they use local content. That is very specific, but most of their advertisement are using American culture. So when we talk about strategy, cross-cultural strategy, we talk about standardized strategy, we talk about localized strategy, but Apple is trying to stay American. Why? Okay, this is something that you need to think why. Why sometimes it works to do standardized strategy, or sometimes it is more appropriate to do localized strategy. All right, so you need to think about that. Now, why it matters to have a global cultural strategy? One is relevancy. Okay, because some part of the world may be price sensitive. For example, in India, okay, in India they're very price sensitive. Um, Loyalty may be different. For example, in the US, for example, in Apple in US, you have that brand loyalty. But in India, you do not have. Apple do not have that loyalty because they are price sensitive. They go for the cheaper version. So how do you overcome that problem? And diffusion, okay, diffusions means whenever you go, sometimes the foreign culture become the local culture. For example, like previously in Malaysia in 1960s or 70s, I think in 70s, whereby first McDonald's come into the local scene, KFC come into the local scene. Previously, we do not eat burgers. Okay, Malaysia do not eat burgers. But when McDonald's come into Malaysian market, they introduce a culture of eating burgers. Before KFC come into Malaysian market, yes, Malaysian does eat fried chicken, but we eat fried chicken with rice, with other dishes and all that. We never eat just the fried chicken, right? But then when KFC come into the market, they change that culture. Means we just eat the chicken, we just eat the burgers, right? So that's where what we call diffusion, whereby the foreign culture become a local culture. Now it's a culture for Malaysian to eat burgers, to eat fried chicken, and in fact, when McDonald's come into Malaysian market, they introduce chicken rice. They introduce nasi lemak. That's the classic case of diffusion. And does global marketing works? This is something which is quite uh, tough to answer. Okay, when there is a different culture, the consumer may use the product differently. How's that? Hmm. For example, in America, people drink Coca-Cola for, let's say, for lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. But in Malaysia, people may drink Coca-Cola to what? Uh, to to take care of gassy stomach, right? That's I don't know whether it's true, but there are people who drink Coca-Cola to cure gassy stomach, right? So different culture using product differently. And when we have this globalization, okay, we cannot run away from the idea of globalization being rejected by certain local people because they view globalization or the foreign culture that come as a form of a new form of colonization. Means the especially from Western, okay, they come to Malaysia and then they introduce their culture, and it viewed by the local as a form of colonization, a new form of colonization. Means last time these people come and colonize through weapon, but now they come using money, using trade as a new form of colonialization. I still remember when I was in the university in the Law School. McDonald's tried to open a restaurant inside University of Mayor, and at that point of time, I think it's good because when I was a student, I work. Okay, I work part time to earn money. But when McDonald wanted to open their branch or an outlet inside UC Malaysia, I welcome the idea because I think that's opportunity for me to make more money. It means In fact, the proposed outlet is in front of my law school. Okay, so I thought it's a very good idea. So I quite proponent with the idea, but almost majority of the student, okay, majority of the student, uh, they somehow they feel strongly against the idea of McDonald's opening up an outlet inside Muslim Malaya. Why? Because they think that it is a foreign culture. It's a foreign. It's somehow McDonald's is like an indication or a symbol of American culture, and if we allow McDonald's to open up an outlet inside UC Malaya, it as if like uh, we are allowing American culture to colonize Malaysian culture or especially Malay cultures, right? So Malay supremacy or Malay right wing, okay, it's been a while for a long time. Since I think since in my university in 90s, that understanding or the ideology is there. So sometimes when you go to foreign countries, you bring your culture with you, and local may not be being positive about that. They may think that you are polluting the local culture. Okay, they wanted to become a purist. Okay, this is what we call, and now we call it nationalist, whereby we got the xenophobia, we are anti-immigrant, we are right wing. We think we become nationalists. We wanted to protect our country from another country, so we become protectionists. So uh, these are the issues that attract to global trade, and something which a collusion of cultures means of foreign cultures and the local culture collide. So what will happen? What is a positive and negative reaction to that collision? So with that, I leave you to think about this. Um, this the slide or what this online tutorial is based on the slide that I put on I think last week. So you can refer to the slide for better understanding about this video tutorial. Alright, until we meet again in the next tutorial, stay safe.